Okay. So who's got our next dream? Somebody's got to have a dream. You got a dream? Yay. Come on up.
That's pretty short.
Okay, so there was a leader, a husband and wife team, and my husband and myself the dream starts out where I'm standing there and I'm handing keys to the husband, leader, and the keys are to. No, it's not keys. I'm sorry. You'll know why I said that. I'm sorry. It's, can you
cut? Okay. We'll start over. Take two.
It's these lights. Okay. No. So, I'm sorry. My husband and myself, it starts out where I'm standing there and I'm handing a watch to this leader. And the leader hands the watch back to me. He doesn't want the watch because he's afraid it's going to scratch his car that was sitting there, and it was parked there. And the car was a Lexus. And then it shifts to his wife, and his wife, it's like the next scene. His wife then is admiring my husband's watch that he's wearing. That's it.
Okay. Very good. So, starts out in this dream. You and your husband and another couple that are leaders are standing there, and you go to hand the leader, the man, a watch. And
like it was a really nice watch. It was a special watch.
Right. But he didn't want it because he was afraid that it was going to scratch his car. And there's this beautiful, nice Lexus that's there that is his. Then scene shifts, and the leader's wife is noticing your husband's watch and how nice it is, and she wants that watch. And that's the end of...
Well, and she's just admiring. She's really
just admiring, not
his
necessarily
watch.
Wanting, but she's just admiring. Well, that's a really nice watch. Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. So pause your video, figure out a title, get your focus, your sub-focuses, and your details. Not a lot of details in this one, but it'll be very interesting as you go through it. Once you get an interpretation, start the video again, and we'll let you know what we got here at the lab. All right. Hey, welcome back to the lab. Let's go through this thing together. Let's see where our diagram ends up and see how close you guys got. What did you come up with for a title for this dream?
Watch refused.
Watch refused. Okay.
That's a good one. Good job. Perfect. Ooh, I got one.
Watch refused. Now, who or what is our focus for this dream?
The dreamer.
The dreamer. Now, this is an interesting one, and we're going to talk about this as we get into the second scene. But for the diagram, it's just simpler if we keep it as the dreamer, but we'll explain why in just a second. What are our sub-focuses? We've got two scenes, and so what we're going to do is we're going to keep scene 1 over here and scene 2 over here. So, first scene, what do we have?
The husband, the other couple husband, right?
Right, and so let's write leaders.
Yes.
And I'm going to write leaders because we'll remember that it was the couple that was there. And then what else do we have?
The watch that Shelly gave was the. But John, the wife wasn't in the first scene?
The wife was not in the first scene at all? Just the leader.
Just the leader.
I misunderstood that. Okay, so just the leader.
That's good.
That changes everything.
That changes everything. All right, we're going to take another break so I can figure out what the dream really means. No, teasing. Okay. Anything else on this scene?
Alexis.
The Lexus, yes. That's a detail off the subfocus of the leader and subfocus of the watch. Now that's the first scene.
And the tension that the Lexus will be scratched, so.
Oh, that's very good. And I'm going to put just a line through to say that was refused. And that'll be easier than writing out the big word refused. So in our second scene, what do we have in the second scene?
The wife.
Now, were you in the second scene and you were just observing?
Yes.
You were there, but you were watching what happened. Okay. I just wanted to clarify.
I was in the second scene and she's observing,
And you saw the interaction between her and your
Yeah.
husband. Okay. Just
admiring.
wanted to clarify because I wasn't quite sure if you were in that scene or if you were just saw that scene. Okay. So let's put the wife, and I'm just going to do a dotted line to say that's the leader's wife, even though the leader's not in this one. That's a subfocus. And what else?
Shelley's husband.
Shelley's husband.
And his watch.
And his watch.
Should I tell you?
Is it in the dream?
No, you got the dream.
Okay.
But should I tell you what the Lexus means? I mean, what the motto for that is? I studied.
In pursuit of perfection?
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah, the Lexus motto in pursuit of. I used to have, back in the 90s when they did all the cheesy Christian t-shirts, I used to have one that was the Lexus logo, but it said Jesus instead, and it said in pursuit of true perfection. So I have a reason for remembering that one.
We forgive you.
It was cheesy, but I liked it back then. Okay, so, and then I'm going to put an arrow from the wife to say she's admiring this watch. She likes this watch, or she appreciates this watch. Okay. Now, here's the dream hinges on this. What does a watch mean?
Watching. Yeah.
Watching. This one is a play on words. It's about watching. It's about the watchman. It's about the intercession. It's about the seer gift. It's about the offer of the prophetic, of the watching. So the watch represents the seer or the prophetic gifting. So I'm just going to write seer. Now that basically should unravel that dream, right? Because this is a leader. Now, whether it's that particular leader or it's leader in general, the dreamer can figure that one out, right? Now, what's the Lexus represent? The ministry, right? It would represent the leader's ministry. So it's their church or it's their ministry. Whatever it is that they lead, that's what they are driving. They're moving forward. And they're concerned that if they let this come in, that it's not going to look as good, that it's going to mar the image. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, husband's wife, leader's wife. What does the leader's wife represent?
The church.
The bride.
The bride of Christ.
Now, here's one of the things that you have. Switching dreams. It's not going to be the car, the actual church, the actual ministry itself, because that's already in the dream. So if it was going to be in the same dream, it would be the same image. Right? So being the wife, it's probably talking about the people that are in there, that are following that are married to this ministry, or it's actually talking about other leaders, or maybe it's a personal thing about the wife. So that's one of the things that you've got to figure out. Now, in this particular dream, I actually believe that it's literally the leader's wife.
Yeah.
That it literally is her. Right? And what is she?
Admiring.
She's admiring the prophetic gifting.
Yes.
She's admiring the prophetic gifting. All right, now this is kind of what maybe we'd call it a state of affairs, a word of knowledge dream. It's an understanding dream. One of the questions that you like to ask, or you should ask when you're interpreting his dream, is why did God give this dream to this dreamer? And so the dreamer probably knows most of this already. So why did God give this dreamer this dream? That's one of the questions that we want to make sure that we answer in our interpretation. So what did you guys get? Who wants to share an interpretation? Come on up, Gail.
Okay.
So we had that, we got the play on words too. So the dreamer had a watch, whether we didn't understand whether it was watchman on the wall calling, which would be interceding or prophetic, but you had something to give to this leader. And he refused it because he didn't want to mar the image. But we also added into the piece about honoring what he did. Because you don't get Alexis from being lazy. You don't get Alexis from being laid back. It's beautiful. It's powerful. And he values it. And he doesn't, and so it's like understanding maybe he doesn't want to mar the image. But it all is not lost for this couple. Because we thought the wife was literal as well. In that she's admiring it. And I just remember John Paul used to say, just wait. Just wait until the wife has a dream. Just wait until, And so it was like all is not lost for this couple because the wife is still admiring it. And so, and that seems to be where God left the dream with you, was it wasn't hopeless. It was almost like he left an ellipsis at the end, dot, dot, dot. And so that's what we got.
Yeah. Now, out of curiosity, what did you do with the husband? Was the husband literal or symbolic?
We got him as literal.
Okay.
Yep. So.
Very good. Thank you.
Yep.
Very good. Yeah, that was great. That was a great interpretation. So, and that piece, right? That little piece, that little added piece, one of the things John Paul always used to say is just wait until the wife gets a dream. And that was that word of wisdom that gives the reasoning why God gave this dream to this dreamer. Just have patience. There's not always an immediate acceptance of the gift that you have, but just wait, because there is favor even though it comes from an unexpected source. Does that make sense? Any questions on this one?
The
Yeah.
thing I'd ask is, or we might say, is that with her mouth and with her words, that she would bless them. Because the question you asked right off the bat, which I asked too, why did God give her this dream about them?
Yeah.
I said potentially there might be some interconnectedness with this couple in the future, potentially. But the fact that God gave her the dream is because he would entrust her to bless them and to pray for them. I'm not saying it necessarily has to be deep intercession, but just to bless them, and that because that opens the door for the Holy Spirit to move and do the work that he wants to do through this couple.
Yeah.
So
That's good. And while there may not be an immediate acceptance for them to integrate it into what they're doing, that doesn't mean they don't accept them and the gift that they have and they carry as individuals.
Well, and there was no emotion, I should say too, in the first part. There was no, it just is what it was. It was what it was. There was no, he was very kind, and I just took it back. There was
No offense.
not on either part.
Yeah.
And there wasn't even offense with the wife and my the other. You know,
Yeah.
they're just. It was almost like in that part I was observing.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was more involved in that first one.
Yeah. See, and that was the piece I was saying, that where you have that, we put the dreamer as the focus. Generally, you put the dreamer as the focus because they're doing all the activity. But in this dream, you have part of it where they're doing activity, but part of it that they're observing. And that will often happen when the dreamer is an intercessor, fitting in with watchman, fitting in with seer.
Right.
When the dreamer is an intercessor, a lot of times that they'll go from being in the dream to observing the dream, and you can't quite figure out, like, where do we put the focus? And you default to the dreamer because if they're an intercessor, intercessors carry things for other people, and so they're identifying with what they intercede for. And when you can't quite figure that out, one of the things that you'll sometimes ask, doesn't work in this dream, but sometimes you want to ask, is the dreamer literal? Because sometimes the dreamer will represent something. They're not actually themselves in the dream. Remember Pharaoh's dream that Joseph interpreted. Pharaoh wasn't Pharaoh. Pharaoh represented Egypt. And so he was representing what he had responsibility for because he carried that. And so that's something you happen with leaders and with intercessors. You'll see that happen. So pay attention to that. It'll help to unravel some of those dreams. You just kind of get caught on it and you can't quite figure out. That might help you. Any other questions?
Is there any significance of her handing the watch, like her, like literally doing that action of giving it to them? Like, it's not something that she presented to them. It felt like she gave it to them, right? I mean, so is there any significance?
Yeah, well, she was trying to give it to him. So something that she had, she was trying to give to them, but it wasn't received. And so it's that action of trying to give.
So
Yeah.
it means that the leader and his wife, or however that is, they're called, or they have, that they would begin to move if the leader had received the gift. That meant that they would begin to move in that prophetic gift, is it?
Well, either move in that or integrate it into what they're doing. And because of the concern of it scratching the car, it seems to be about how it gets integrated into the church, integrated into the ministry. I mean, when somebody gives you a watch and you wear it, it's a very visible thing. So it's not something you just put in your pocket and nobody knows about. And so all of those are pieces that tie into that. Yeah. Yeah, good question.
John?
Yeah.
Could you say that the leader doesn't want to know what time it is or what season it is or what's happening, but the wife is very curious about where they're at? Because it seems like that kind of language would fit as well, because he could avoid a lot of things if he would pay attention to what's happening around him. And it's like he doesn't want to know, totally rejects, and she's like, hey, I'm interested in knowing what time it is, what season we're in, because it's almost like the sons of Issachar kind of feel, I get from this dream, that there's something that's very important for this man to know, and he's ignoring it, and instead of a scratch, he's going to get a dent if he doesn't watch out, because the Lord wants to tell him what time it is.
Yeah, and see, now that's where you take that last little piece where instead of getting a scratch, there will be a dent. That's where you're taking from the dream and then you're adding on revelation. So sometimes there's that word of warning that comes with it, that is helpful, that gives a little bit of impact to the dream. But yeah, I mean, it is when you're watching, seeing what's coming, the watchman, the observation of what's happening, and seeing things clearly, and it not being received because how it would look and how that image. That there's definitely a warning. And generally, if you're not paying attention to those things, it does end up causing more problems. There's this dream that we will do in the Understanding Dreams and Visions course, and it's a 5-scene dream that somebody had dreamed, and I believe it was in 1986. I actually have to look at my notes to remember exactly, but it was a while, 1988. I'm pretty sure it was a while back. And this 5-scene dream, in one of the scenes, there was this piece where all these mothers and their children were lining up at the river, and they were all concerned, and they knew they had to jump in, but they were all scared of jumping in. And the dreamer had jumped in before, but there was still some concern, so there was some jealousy with some of the other people. And finally, one of the other ladies that had never jumped in, she grabs her kids and tells them, jump into the river. And when they jumped into the river, the dreamer heard the voice of God that says, because of this lady's faith, I'm going to raise her up because she chose me over her children. And there's such an important principle in that dream, because it's talking about that when leaders will choose God over the people in the church, that God will lift them up. God will exalt them. But if you go after what people want and what people like, you'll end up missing God. And so there's always that warning that you've got to go after it. And sometimes there's this thing that the world puts on us, that the enemy, the culture puts on us. It says, if we really went after everything that God wanted, everybody would just think that we're weird, and people would run. And you know, the reality is people are attracted to something genuine and something that's real. And so the question is, how can you steward it with maturity, not how can you ignore it? And we don't say that because we want to point the finger at anybody else. We want to look at our own hearts, because each one of us do that a little bit. We do that with our friends. We do that with our family. We do that in these little situations. But also realize that same temptation, that's a major temptation, especially in our culture, where the spirit of the fear of man is ruling so strongly in our culture, and speaking specifically to America, but to Western culture in general. And that spirit is a very real battle, and our leaders need our intercession so that they will choose God over the spirit of the fear of man. Because if they allow the spirit of the fear of man to rule them, they'll miss out on what God's doing. And we're called to pray for our leaders, everybody that's in a place of authority. And so the other part of this dream, the reason the dreamer got this dream is so that she would pray, so she would intercede, she would cry out, that they would receive the gift, they would receive the watch, the ability to see, the ability to know what's coming, so that they would make the right choices as they move forward. But there's left with hope, because there is real hunger that's there. And so never give up hope. We too easily, we get into this judgmental mind and say, oh, they just don't want the movement. No, they want it more than what you often realize and what I often realize. But there's a very real battle, and they need our support, not our criticism, if they're going to win. So let's give them that.